If there's one sin that is destroying so many people's spiritual walks, and this is especially what I see with our generation, the younger generation today, that is gossip. Gossip is so dangerous because it is a sin that not often people look at within themselves, and it's very hard to because the root of it comes from pride, where you start to become self-righteous and you exalt yourself to a position that you think you are better than the other person. And pride and gossip is talked about a lot in the scriptures, but one passage I wanted to bring was in James chapter 3, verses 5 through 10. Now, James is written to the scattered tribes in during the Roman Empire when it was scattered. This is when James, the brother of Jesus, the half brother of Jesus, writes to give some wisdom to these scattered tribes on how they can practically apply their faith in God. And so many themes you see throughout the book of James, chapter 1 talks about being having perseverance and being doers of the word and not hearers. Chapter 2 speaks about the kind of faith that we should have, one that is not just without works, but one that is accompanied by good works, not saying those works justify you in front of God. And then chapter 3 brings us to the fact about the power of the tongue, and you're going to see very large descriptive language used to describe the tongue that you and I have never thought about before. But what is gossip? Gossip, and this is from desiringgod.org, the way of summarizing the Bible's teaching on this topic is to say the sin of gossip is bearing bad news behind someone's back out of a bad heart. So you're spreading news about someone that they wouldn't want other people to know about it, and it's very common in school. I think public schools and private schools, I bet, are a center for gossip because one thing you say is echoed through the whole school. And so you have to be very careful in the words that you say. And this is what James talks about in starting from verse 5. And this is what he says in verse 5. So also the tongue is a small part of the body, and yet it boasts of great things. Behold, how great a forest is set aflame by such a small fire. Verse 6. And the tongue is a fire, the very world of unrighteousness. The tongue is set among our members as that which defiles the entire body, and sets on fire the course of existence, and is set on the fire by hell. Verse 7, for every kind of beast and birds, of reptiles and creatures of the sea is tamed, and has been tamed by mankind. Verse 8, but no one can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil and full of deadly poison. Verse 9, with it we bless our Lord and Father, and with it we curse men who have been made in the likeness of God. Verse 10 mentions that from the same mouth comes blessing and curse. There are a couple things that we see the power of the tongue has. First thing is that the tongue is the smallest part of the body, yet it boasts of great things. It is the smallest organ in your body, yet it has such power when you speak. And speaking is something we often do, especially in this chapter. James warns against people to be teachers because they are often using their tongue every single day in our lives. The second thing about the tongue is that the words we speak can spread like wildfire. And that's exactly what gossip is. Notice how James compares the tongue. He makes an analogy of how the tongue is like a fire. It's a metaphor. Even though the tongue can defile the entire body and sets on by, and the fire is set by hell. That is very descriptive language. Hell is the punishment where wicked people are going, and yet the tongue is being compared to that. That is what our tongue can do. It spreads like wildfire. The words you say really need to be carefully placed because it can spread like wildfire. You say one thing and it can spread everywhere. That is the power of the tongue. And then we read the third thing, that no one can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil and full of deadly poison, like a snake. That is what your tongue is. No one can tame it. But then the question is, how do we control our tongue? The answer is always the same. God needs to control our tongue. When you pray, ask God to control the words that come out of your mouth, because the words we say have a meaning. It could mean life and death, as Proverbs mentions. Ask God to give you the strength, His strength, to know what words to say. That every word you say should be something that honors God. The last thing we read about the tongue is that with it we bless our Lord and Father, but we also curse men who are made in the image of the likeness of God. And notice how the tongue can be used in a prideful way, a hypocritical way, where with the tongue you bless people, and with it you also curse people who are made in the image of God. And so what James is telling us, that we should not be doing that. The tongue is very powerful, and you need to watch the words that you are saying to other people, because little do you know, the words that you spread or the gossip that you spread can hurt that person on the inside. Maybe you don't realize that, but when you hurt people like that with your words, God is not going to take that lightly. So then the question is, how do we become better at not gossiping, especially in a biblical worldview, especially in our lives where there is so much gossip around? The first thing is completely shut out your ears. Whenever someone is coming to you and they're giving gossip, do something else. Don't even listen to it. Don't even pay attention to it. Don't even go close to it. The second thing you can do is redirect the conversation. Say, hey, let's talk about this. Let's not talk about that instead. Let's not talk about what that person's doing. Let's talk about something, and how are you doing in your life? So you can either redirect the conversation or completely block out the gossip in your head. This is something that I need to continue to fix on my own, and something that we all need to, because it is definitely a hidden sin that blocks us with our relationship with God. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope this video blessed you. And on that note, take care and God bless.